Okay guys, in the third chapter we're going to UV our low poly game mesh. Okay, so I have my low poly no UV mesh selected right here, and there's a few things we need to take into account when we're making a hard edged mechanical model, and we're going to be baking normal maps to it, so there's a few tricks we need to learn to make sure we get the best bakes from our normal maps. So I'm going to go and let's just get started. I'm going to open up my UV texture editor, and immediately we get something that looks like this. This is in no way, shape, or form reminiscent of my model here, and we need to make this, yeah, we got to work on this a little bit, okay? So the most important thing we need to think about when we start laying out our UVs, every time there's a hard 90-degree angle, we need to make it a UV seam along that edge. So these edges right here, 90 degrees, boom, boom, boom. This needs to be a UV edge. And yes, sometimes that'll mean that this single face right here, since it's all 90-degree edges around it, this will have to be its own face. There's no getting around it. Normal maps will not bake correctly if this 90-degree face is connected to, say, this face right here. Just take my word for it now. I will create some, show you some examples in the future of the pitfalls of UV mapping. But for right now, let's just UV it and take my word for it that that is bad. But what we can do is every flat face we see, and this is encouraged, we're going to select all the flat faces on the front here. This is all going to be one UV island here. Okay, great. And even maybe the top here. See, this angle right here is not very severe, so we can pretty much take all these angles right here, and we can, or all these faces right here, even though this angle occurs, it's not 90 degrees, so we don't have to worry about it. It's kind of front facing us, so let's go into our front camera, and let's project a UV map on there, and let's use my favorite one. Let's go to create UVs based on camera, and we immediately get something like this. Maya's lagging up a little bit, that's okay. And what we're going to do, we're just going to move it out of the way for right now, okay? And with my UV selected, let's make sure we get plenty of UV space for everything. So I'm going to select my UVs, and let's see if an unfold helps it at all. Alright, that unfold kind of got the kinks out of it. It gave me plenty of space up here. Let's undo that and we'll see the difference. So this right here is kind of narrow. When we unfold it, it gets a little bit more lively. Okay, it gets a little bit more space. It comes alive when you unfold it, I guess you could say. So we're just going to take our UVs now, and we're just going to make sure that we get some nice flat edges here. So the bottom kind of got out of whack a little bit when we unfolded it. So I'm going to select these bottom two UVs, and I'm going to use these shortcuts up here to pinch them down evenly. This pinches all the UVs down to the minimum V value, and if I select these right here, this will push it over all the way to the right, and now they're all lined up. This right here this one right here, the arrow up, will push them to the top. We'll get them down to the right, and we're just aligning our UVs so they're a little bit more geometric, a little bit easier to draw on. Okay, so I'm just going to take every single value that should be lined up, and I'm going to line them up manually. Alright, so this is the front of our wall. This is the main meat and potatoes of our wall, and it's nice and UV'd right now. So let's take a look at the rest of our wall here. Okay, so let's go into single mode. Excuse me for that. So let's go back into our view right here, and how do we tell what we've UV'd? Well, we can go to our hypershade, and we can create a stand-in texture of a checkerboard. So I'm going to go to Lambert, and I'm just going to drop middle mouse click and drop this Lambert on this model. We'll go into our attribute editor. Here's our Lambert 2. We'll call this checker matte for a checker material. We'll hit enter. And let's just plug in a checkerboard there. Alright, great. So if we hit 6 on the keyboard, we see we have our checkers. They're all nice and lined up. Let's see if we can mess with how packed our checkers are. I know we can make the checkers. There we go. We'll go to our repeat UV and let's make them 20 apiece. If we go to high quality rendering, our checkers are now smaller and we can get a better idea of the stretching, if it occurs. Alright, great. So with my mat set up, I now can start tackling the rest of my model here. So let's take this side right here, our damaged side. And keep in mind, when you UV something for a video game, you're constantly having to juggle 90-degree UV islands and trying to keep as few UV islands as you can. So anywhere I see an edge or an angle that's not completely 90 degrees, as we can see here, none of these are severe 90-degree angles, I know I can make this one complete UV island without any problem. There's not going to be any normal map issues by taking this complete side of the face and making its own UV island. So I'm just going to go to the side here, get a nice view of my wall, and this projects another UV island here. I'm going to turn off that texture real quick. So I'm going to create UVs based on camera. So it gives me this piece right here, and I'm just going to unfold these. So we'll go to unfold, and it gives us a nice approximation of what we're looking at here. And again, I'm going to take all the UVs on the left side and I'm going to pack them to the left. I'm going to do the same to the right side. I'm going to pack them to the right. And then I'm just going to go down the line here and I'm just going to pack them upwards. So we're getting some nice, clean UV map islands. Alright, so the left side of my wall is UV mapped. I'm just going to set it out here for right now. And I'm going to minimize. See how nice and clean those checkers are now? Alright, so unfortunately for the bottom of our wall, we have to make it its own UV island. So we'll just look at it from the bottom here. And we'll go to create UV islands based on camera. I'm instantly given something like this. Alright, and we're going to unfold it just to make sure that we get the most space we can out of it. Looks good. And then again, I'm going to pack the UVs up and pack them down to the right, to the left. I'm basically just snapping the UVs like you would snap something to a grid. And I'm just going to move this kind of towards the bottom. I'm not optimized the UV layout, but I'm just putting them in a place where they're out of the way and I easily know what they are. So let's grab all the faces on the left side of my model. This is about all we can do because anywhere else is a 90-degree shift. So 90 degrees, 90 degrees, 90 degrees up, down through here. So that's about all we can do with this side. So let's look at it. Let's go to create UVs based on camera. We get a nice little shape like this. Let's pull it over here. And let's go and unfold these. That way we get a nice non-stretched out UV island. All right, and we're just gonna snap them. I'm gonna snap these. The reason why I'm snapping them is because I know this is a geometric shape, so I can have really clean edge flows on my UVs, and it won't affect the stretch too much. Because this, I modeled it, pretty mechanically. It might be a hard concept to understand, but just know that when you have nice mechanical shapes with a lot of 90 degrees, that packing these is one of the best things you can do because it keeps your UV maps nice and uniform with that of your model. Because the unfold function here can kind of skew the maps just a little bit. And that's the right side there. That's the left side. So now all we got to do is the top in our utility box. And unfortunately the top has some pretty severe 90-degree angles. So let's just look at it from the top down, like so. You don't have to be so precise because the unfold will help us get the true shape of this. So based on camera, we'll bring up my UV editor. I'll grab the UVs, and here's the top of my wall. And just to make sure we get a nice non-stretch shape, we'll unfold it just a little bit, and then we'll do the packing procedure. Up, down. We're going to jam it to the left, and jam it to the right. Alright, so now we just need to take this box. We got 3 more UV islands to make. Let's go ahead and tackle the front face. I can't do these sides as much as I would like to make this all one complete UV island. Those 90 degrees are going to make my normal maps come up funky. So let's create UVs based on my camera here. We'll grab these UVs like so, and we'll just move them out kind of right here, and we'll unfold it. Again, we'll snap our UVs so we don't get this kind of skewed line. Alright, and looks like we have to, and let's take a second now and look at the distribution of UV space here. Only have to do the inside of that window too. Notice how these checkers are a lot smaller than the face textures. That's because my front of my utility box part right here, or service maintenance box, it's really big. So I need to shrink this UV space right here. And if I shrink it, we get something more akin to the actual size on my UV space right here. It's not being a hog and taking up all the UV space. Alright, cool. So let's just do this for these right here. And I'm just going to take a shortcut. I'm going to look at it from the top camera because I know this is facing totally down. Alright. And you can also do an automatic map. That's also a possibility. The automatic map automatically came and made it this nice skinny piece right here. Again, my squares are a little smaller here, so I'm going to have to shrink my piece right here. That's about the size I want it, right there. And this is the bottom, so I'm going to rotate it to kind of fit around the bottom of my utility box. Again, this is just for my own benefit. We haven't begun to pack our UV islands on our 1 to 0 space at all yet. So I'm going to go in and create UVs, give it an automatic map again. It gives me the approximate shape we have here. See how it has this nice little angle here. It replicates it right here, and I go in, and since I did an automatic map, I really don't have to worry about unfolding it because I know that automatic map is going to be precise as possible because, you know, it's looking at it head on. The projections are looking at it head on. So I'm just going to move this right there. So, and unfortunately, every single one of these faces has to get its own UV map as well. So let's just select all 4 of them, and we'll take a shortcut. We'll do an automatic map, and you see these purple planes. They're looking at this model from 6 different angles: top, bottom, front, back, left, right. And since these faces correspond to those camera planes, we get a nice layout of each single one without any distortion at all in our UV space. But they're way too big and they're way too close together. Alright, so after I scale them, it looks like everything is UV'd, at least initially. I need to go in and kind of separate these. These are just too close together. It's not smart to have your UV islands be so close together. So I'm going to just select one of these corners, and let's see, select, what is it? Select shell. We can go to the select shell. If I select one of the corners here and go to select shell, it selects that whole UV island for me. And I'm just going to move it out just a little bit. I'll do the same here. Well, I'm going to give it enough space so I can start moving them all out here. I'll do the same here. Select shell. And I'm going to give it plenty of breathing room. We don't want to cramp up our UV space too much. Select shell. I'll give it the same amount right there. And then I'll do the same right here. Alright. So, you know what? These squares might be a little bit bigger, so let's shrink these just a little bit. Alright, so we're almost done. Now we need to intelligently pack our UV islands on just this 1 to 0 space. We can't go outside of this grid. We have to stay from here to here. We can't be out here. We can't be in any of these grids right here. So I usually like to start with the biggest shape I have. So I'll select a few of these UVs, go to select shell. That grabs every single UV here. And obviously I can't have this whole front face taking up the whole 1 to 0 space, so I'm going to have to shrink it a little bit. And then I'm just going to tuck it away up here. And like we gave the breathing room to those other UV islands a second ago, we're not going to place them exactly on the corners here. We're going to give a little bit of space around the edges here. That'll be plenty of space. Alright, let's see if that works. Okay, you can place your first one like so, and then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to match up the proportion of size from the front face to the rest of these faces. See how these squares are a little bit bigger than the rest of the model? So I need to shrink these down a little bit more. So now all the squares in my view area are roughly the same size or proportion to one another. So that looks good. Alright. So now it's up to me to start packing and placing these UV islands intelligently. You know what? I might keep the same theme I had going of intelligently placing my islands so I know what is what. But you don't want to let that dictate where your UVs go. Grow my selection. Alright, cool. Let's grab this side. And maybe we can pack it on here like so. Give it some nice space. You want to be as efficient as possible while giving each island its own breathing room. Like so. You don't want your textures to start bleeding on top of one another. That'd be very bad. So here's the top. Okay, we'll place it like so. Okay, I think I'm going to move these up now. I don't want to waste too much space. There we go. Alright, so here's the front of my utility box. I'm going to do something smart. I'm going to place it in this little open area right here. That'll give me plenty of room to work on it. I even maybe stretch it out a little bit more. Not too much though. Give me plenty of, no, I think I made it too big. I don't want them to be too close. Alright, great. So here's the bottom of that utility box. So I'm just going to place it right here. It may not be directly under the box like we had it, but we'll compensate for it. We'll just get used to it being right there. I'll do the same for this. Now maybe we can actually place it in conjunction like we had it. So I'm going to move this over just a little bit. I wonder if I can just sneak this in here like so. I think that'll be enough space for us. Alright, great. Alright, we're really getting this packed in there pretty well, pretty nicely. So all I have left to do is the bottom piece. And I'll do this like so. And then we'll just take care of the insides of my window right here. Alright, we might have to break them up, make them a little bit bigger. Let's see if I can place these two right here. And then I'll grab these individually and I'll just come in here and pack them like so. Alright, give me a little bit more space between these two. And more space right there. Alright, great. So, all the pieces of my wall are now packed. And I'm just going to go through it with a fine-tooth comb to make sure I'm not goofing anywhere. Make sure I got enough border space around it. I don't think any of the islands are too close to one another. Alright. Great. Alright, well I think that does it for UVing our low poly mesh. What we see right now is we have the front side, let's call this the front side of my wall made. Shortly we'll duplicate it and we'll give the back side, and they're just going to share the same UV space. The front side and the back side will have the same UV space, so the models will be repeated on either side. So it's a nice little texture saving way to get a pretty good resolution, because remember, we may only have 512 pixels by 512 pixels in the space right here to describe the colors and normal maps of this wall. If we had to have double the amount of faces here and pack the double amount of UV islands, then we lose considerable amount of resolution space. So the more islands you have, the smaller they have to be, the less resolution you get on your textures. So that's why duplicating the front and back side of this face is pretty smart. Alright, so in the next lesson we'll start setting up our baking process inside of Maya, where we can take our nice high poly model and bake the details of that, especially around these edges here, and we'll bake those details right onto our low poly model, and we'll be moving into Photoshop and using Endo 2 shortly.